Hello everyone, Simon here. We're doing our architecture tour of Skyrim, and today we're going to look at Solitude, but we're still in Whiterun, so I'm going to go fast travel. Well, fast travel or... doesn't really matter. I'm going to fast travel to Solitude. I'm going to do this because... see what... oh crap, wrong button. So what happens with playing this game is that you start the game at Helgen, right? And you go through a tutorial, and then you walk down this path past the Guardian Stones to Riverwood, and then you walk down here to Whiterun. And that's like the start of the game. But once that is over, you're pretty much in the open world, and the quest doesn't take you to a lot of other places. And you start running around the open world. And so when you travel to other major cities like Morso, so Solitude is up here, there's a lot of different ways to go up there, and the least common way is to walk, because there's fast travel. And when you fast travel, it puts you in front of the city. If I remember right, I don't fast travel very much in this game because I have more fun walking. I enjoy walking, and I think a lot of people do as well. But oh, you inside the city? Wow, that's convenient but bad for us because we don't want to do this. So if you fast travel to the city, you end up inside the city, and so you just completely miss the experience of approaching the city, right? Although you can't fast travel here at the start of the game, you have to discover the location before you can fast travel to it. So if you do the next easiest thing, which is to take the wagon guy, what's it called? If you take the wagon guy is down here, then you get put in front of the city down the slope here. Let me just come over here. So this is the wagon guy. There's one in the 5 major cities. Him, he's the wagon guy. What's he called? Well,
need a ride?
Carriage, the carriage guy.
All right.
So you're dropped off here by the carriage guy, and this is what you see. And this is not beautiful. I mean, it's as beautiful as the game usually is, but you know what I mean. That's Solitude. It's like it's not as it's not anything worth talking about, is it? So let me walk back. Let me walk back to somewhere, and let me just try to find where the concept art is. And by where the concept art is, I mean, you know, when people make big video games like this, they draw concept art first of all. Well, they draw a lot of concept art, and then they get modelers to make the game, and then people to make the textures and all that. So it all begins with kind of imagining the game world in concept art. And I think the concept art is not even this. So there's a giant arch, if you don't know, and Solitude, see those buildings there? Solitude sits on top of the arch. But even this is not the concept art, although... and you notice that the paths now are less...
the gods will always be grateful for everything.
So it kind of leads you down here, and you kind of see that, and that's kind of good. But it's not... I don't think that's the best view of the city. It's kind of cool though. But it's not. I don't think it's the best view. Let me just go down here. So the docks are down here. We'll talk about all of this stuff later on. Let me just find the concept art. See here, that's kind of good, but you can't see what's down there. That's kind of important too, what's down there. There's a giant windmill. Alright, that's okay. And I want you to, as we do this, I want you to remember what the start of the game was like. Remember in the first video, as we walked down the path from Helgen to Whiterun, like every time we turned the corner, we saw something amazing. And then at the end of that path, we ended up at the concept art view of Whiterun. Just before we started entering Whiterun. Like we were at the crossroads and then looking at Whiterun. And the whole city just kind of fit the screen really well, right? And it looked really good. So this is not the concept art again, because when you see that kind of fits the screen, but then there's like this ship in front of it, which is kind of blocking the view a little bit with the ropes and everything. And we also can't see that, and we can't see the ship behind us. So I think the concept art view is actually back there. Like I want to see the whole city, right? I want to see the whole thing lined up, looking good. Like this is the money shot, as it were. The shot that you would sell, like the shot that you would use to sell the game. Let me just get out of the water. Not quite. I haven't done this before, by the way. This is the first time I've ever tried to do this. See, like now we've got this stuff in front of us. See, what I suspect is that the concept art shot is actually in the air somehow. Like, if we can fly up, or maybe it's further back this way. Let me come over here. And you see how unreasonable it is to try and find this view because there's no roads here, right? And you don't really approach the city from this direction usually because it's kind of weird. Because we're in the swamp. Oh crap! There's like mud crabs as well. Let me just well maybe they're not gonna attack us. So I'm trying to fit the city in the screen, but then like there's trees in the way, so I don't know. Maybe this, but it's not. It's not that great, though. I mean, it's less beautiful than Whiterun. I don't know if this makes sense to you guys. I mean, if you studied art or like art history, or if you do any sort of painting or artwork, like you know about framing a scene, or if you do photography, for example, you know about framing a scene, and you want to kind of put the like you want to frame the scene in such a way that like the image is kind of balanced. I think this is it actually. I think this is the screenshot. And you want to kind of see the best view of the thing you're looking at, and then you wanna maybe it's more like that there. So like you need this minor adjustment. You think, well, if you guys just kind of look at that line, that kind of the line at the top of the city, would it be further up? Ah, crabs! Who did that? You spider. Alright, where were we? So I mean, I don't think that tree is supposed to be in the view, so maybe we should stand here. I mean, even then there's like that tree in the way, right? I guess this is kind of okay. Is this the best view of the city? I think it is. And I mean, you can see how the city curves, like you can see like the concave shape of it, and it kind of curves away from you. Almost like the entire city is lining up for you. So there's the blue palace back there, and there's a windmill. Well, there's supposed to be a windmill, but at a distance we can't actually see the windmill because of the geometry disappearing in the distance. And there's a giant arch. Alright, so I guess this is it. But it's so weird that we have to stand here to see it because the paths... Let me go to the map. So we're standing in the swamp, next to a river. The paths that go to Solitude go this way, from Dragon Bridge. So there's no bridges across here at all. You can kind of swim through the water if you want to. But the reasonable way to walk here, if you want to walk, is to walk to Dragon Bridge and then follow this road here. And following this road, you don't actually see Solitude. Like this, like it's actually not a very good view of Solitude as you walk up the road. I can do that. Let me just... Okay, let's read a book. So let's read a book and see what the game has to say about Solitude. And we want Walking the World Volume 9. And then I'll go to Dragon Bridge and actually walk up. And you see what I mean when I say that the city is not well presented, right? So, welcome friend, in our latest volume we cover Solitude. Spetior could not be more pleased to be at the very seat of Imperial power in Skyrim. In the course of our tour, you'll see that Solitude's riches extend from her people to the history and architecture that make up the city itself. So already we know that this is the seat of Imperial power in Skyrim. If you don't know about the story of Skyrim, there's the Imperial province, which is in the middle of the continent, and Skyrim is to the north of it. And so the Imperial power, like the Empire, is the central power. And for most of the Elder Scrolls, the Empire controlled the entire continent. Not now, though. But so Skyrim is like one of the provinces of the Empire, and so the Nords and the Imperials are slightly different people. And so Solitude is where the Empire is strongest in the Skyrim, if that makes sense. And already because this is a seat of Imperial power, and also it's rich, right? As ever, we begin our journey outside the city walls, this time at the bottom of the hill that ascends all the way to Solitude's massive gates. Solitude's surroundings. Before scaling the hill to the city, you should be sure to take in the sights, wander the track that leads down to the docks, and you can stop and enjoy one of the best views of the Great Arch. See, it's not though. We were there, but the best views of the Great Arch is actually across the river. Originally serving as both a landmark and windbreak for Solitude's port, the easily defended Great Arch also provided an ideal building site for the ancient Nords. That's actually completely fictional because arches are not reliable in the real world. Because if there's an earthquake or if there's kind of erosion, which there always is erosion, like natural arches tend to fall down after a while. Like most of them don't last all that long, so it's actually not a good idea to build your city on an arch because if there's an earthquake, the arch is liable to collapse and then you lose your city. But it looks cool in the game. The city gradually grew to extend across the entire length of the arch. This growth culminated in the building of the Blue Palace, home of the High Kings and Queens of Skyrim. We will visit the palace later. The Gates of Solitude. Entrance to Solitude is guarded by 2 gates and 3 towers. The first of these towers, situated at the crossroads, is Sky Tower. It is mostly a lookout, although in times of war, barricades are erected across the nearby road to act as a first line of defense. The second tower and first smaller gate are collectively known as the Squaw Gate. Here, attacking armies meet their first real resistance. Last and certainly most impressive is Stormgate. While Castle Dower, found just within the city's main gate, has always been a massive walled structure, Solitude's outer walls and gates were not added until shortly after the coronation of High King Erling. So Castle Dower is not actually just inside the main gate, it's actually quite a bit behind, on the other side of the city. This is not entirely correct, we'll see it when we walk into the city later on. Looking up and to the left of the main gate, you can see a small hint of Erling's preference for a more rounded style of architecture that we'll see later in the Castle Dower extension, as well as the interior arch and the windmill. So there's a lot of detail here. So there's kind of the old city and the city walls, and then the castle extension, and then the arch, and they're all different. And apparently, they're all different architectural styles. Now we pass through the gates and enter the main shopping district of Solitude. The Well district. Stepping inside Solitude's gates, you get your first view of the city itself. Rising tall and proud before you, banners waving from its crown, is the Emperor's Tower. Home to the kings of Harfinger before the consolidation of Skyrim and the creation of the Blue Palace, the Emperor's Tower is now used exclusively as guest quarters for the emperors who come to visit the city. To your left and right are Solitude's inn and shops. Here can be found some of the finest imported goods in Skyrim. After all, Solitude is a wealthy city with ready access to the major shipping lanes of Tamriel. So you see that we are right next to the river. In fact, the city is built on the arch that kind of crosses across the river. And in the game, as in the real world, port cities are usually quite wealthy because they can trade more easily because they have ships. Whereas if your city is inland and you can't access it by ship, then it's a lot more difficult to move large quantities of goods back and forth, right? And so shipping ports are always places where a lot of money and goods flow through from one place to another. So this is a port city, Solitude. Continuing ahead, you come to the ramp that takes you up to Castle Dower. From here, you can truly feel the weight of this stone bastion's looming presence. So that's kind of contradictory because it says Castle Dower is just within the city's main gate there in that paragraph. And then in this paragraph, it says you have to go past the shopping district before you go up a ramp to Castle Dower. So it's like it seems to contradict itself. Like the castle's in 2 different places. In the first paragraph, it's next to the city walls or the city gate, and then in the next one, it's actually behind the shopping district. From here, you can truly feel the weight of this stone bastion's looming presence. The leftmost tower, topped by the pointed roof of Erling's extensions, was once the castle's barracks and jail. Today the tower is the center of military power here in Solitude, so the Imperial army is stationed at Castle Dower. Looking right past the looming Emperor's Tower, you can glimpse Solitude's natural bridge arcing gracefully over the windmill. I don't think it's a natural bridge, I think it's a built bridge. Built during High King Erling's day, the bridge was said to be used to discreetly allow Captain Jet, the famous privateer, to enter Castle Dower. Some historians claim that she and the High King were simply attempting to keep their business dealings quiet. Others believe the Jet and Erling were involved on a more personal level. At the end of the bridge is the windmill. The tower and the windmill serve as one of Solitude's most recognizable man-made landmarks. The windmill's power was once used to open the gates to what is now the East Empire Company warehouse. But today that task falls to the strong backs of the dock workers. So the East Empire Company warehouse is that big arch thing next to the docks, like built into the hill. In the shadow of the windmill you find the outdoor market and the well. Here you can buy a number of local delicacies including the famous spiced wine made exclusively in Solitude. From here we travel up the ramp and into Castle Dower Courtyard. This is a big book. Castle Dower. As you enter the courtyard of Castle Dower, you are confronted with the banner of Solitude hanging over the door to what is now Castle Dower proper. At the far end of the courtyard stands the impressive Temple of the Divines. The founders of Solitude were deeply devout, and Solitude is the only place in Skyrim where all of the Divines are worshipped in a single temple. All three of the buildings here are well worth taking a look inside, but only the temple and Castle Dower's military wing are open. If you do venture inside the temple, take special note of the alcoves at the front. You can see the empty alcove that once held the shrine of Talos, before Talos worship was outlawed. So that's a political thing in the game, where Talos was banned from the religion. From the courtyard, travel out to the exit between Castle Dower and the temple, and you get your first sight of the Blue Palace. Along the way, be sure to stop outside the Bard's College, a large building to your left marked by the flames of Callistos burning beside the steps. Named for a famous bard, it is said that as long as the flame burns, the college will stand. The Bard's College. Looking up from the Bard's College steps, you can see that the college stands taller than the Blue Palace itself. The bards who train here can be heard throughout Skyrim, singing songs that capture the history of the ages. If you get a chance, you should be sure to catch the burning of King Olaf, an ancient festival where King Olaf is burned in effigy. Continue up the road from the college and you'll reach the courtyard of the Blue Palace, our final destination. The Blue Palace. I don't think it's actually blue, anyway. The Blue Palace is home to the Jarls of Solitude, who for centuries have also served as the High Kings and High Queens of Skyrim. The northeast wing on your left as you enter holds the living quarters of the Jarl and her court on the top level and various servants below. The southwest wing, known as the Pelagius wing, has fallen into a state of disrepair, named for the famous High King Pelagius the Mad. Pelagius? The wing is rumored to be haunted by the king's ghost. The wing has been locked and left alone since shortly after Pelagius' death. You should be sure to venture inside the Blue Palace. The Grand Atrium and Court Chambers are a sight not to be missed. Other points of interest. Smetio has shown you Solitude in all its grandeur, but there are a few places more to see. The walls of the city are easily accessible and well worth climbing for the remarkable view. The Solitude docks are also worth a visit as they are the largest in Skyrim. They are, but in the game they're still out of scale because there's like 2 ships in the docks. There's only 2 ships, so it's not that big in the game. And that's it for the book. Alright. So there's the Castle Dower, there's the Market District, there's the Windmill, there's the Blue Palace, there's the Bard's College. So Bard's College, Blue Palace, Windmill, Castle Dower, Docks, East Empire Company Warehouse, and of course the Giant Arch. And this is the best view of the city that I can find right now. What if I come over here? Just come over here. No, see, that doesn't, you can't quite fit the boat and the arch fully in the frame, right? You see that? And the stuff in the front as well. Okay, so what I want to do now is fast travel my way to Dragon Bridge. This is actually a long way away. But I just want to walk towards Solitude along the main road in the game. And as we do so, I want you to pay attention to how boring this is. I'm gonna just really emphasize how boring this is. So, we're gonna try and see Solitude from a distance, and we'll see how well we do here. So let me run a little bit. So we're running up from Dragon Bridge to Solitude, following the main road. You can't see Solitude from here. There are Daedric ruins up there, but we're not gonna go up there. And this is the road. This is the road to Solitude. You can't, no cities, no cities, no cities. It's just the road, there's trees. And you'll notice, like, remember the road from Riverwood, or like from Helgen down to Whiterun? How there were always like logs and cliffs and stones and rivers and things on either side of the path. And the path was kind of always bracketed by these shapes that funnel you along the path. Whereas look at these roads now. Now that we're out in the wilderness, look how open this is. There's absolutely nothing blocking you in. I guess there's a big cliff there. But, you know, there's nothing here stopping you from just running off the cliff. So, like, the start of the game is qualitatively different from every other part of the game. Like, the very first areas of the game is designed like much more like this, where you're always hemmed in by something on this side and something on this side. And then there's Solitude. I guess there's the blue palace in the distance, but it's so far away that you can barely see it. And then as you walk down the path, this is what you see of Solitude as you enter the city. And then there it is, you go in the city. Where's the money shot? Where's the concept art? You know, where's the view of the city that looks really beautiful and makes you just step back and say, wow, that's really beautiful? You don't see it. As you walk the main road into the city, you don't see the city. You see what I mean, right? You see what I mean, right? Like, I'm not just making this up. You actually can't see the arch or anything that's impressive about the city if you just walk up the road into it. And so I just, you know, we can only conclude that this road was not as carefully designed as the road to Whiterun. The road to Whiterun was so thoroughly designed that every time the road kind of turns left or right, you get an interesting view of the city. Here, you don't get any interesting view of the city. If anything, you have to avoid the city and come down to the docks in order to get a slightly interesting view, which is this. And even this is not the best view. As we saw, the best view was down there, right? Looking out this way. So you have to kind of go off the main path to see the city the way the game artists want you to see it. And that's a little bit of a shame. Because, you know, they spent so much time making this. And then they designed the game in such a way that the player would not see it unless they deliberately go out of their way to see it.
No matter what else happens,
Dude,
the
shut up.
gods will always be grateful for everything you've done.
So, like, when I say it's a bit of a shame, it's because, like, they put so much effort into this, but the players don't often see it. You know, it's like you make a beautiful painting and you put it inside a cupboard, and no one sees it. It's like, well, why'd you go to all that length to make that beautiful painting if you're just gonna hide it somewhere that nobody sees it, right? And that's a shame. That's a shame because it is beautiful. Look at it. Look at this. It's pretty impressive, right? Anyway, so Solitude, like Whiterun, also has a farm. Well, the Whiterun has more farms, and this farm is really small. That's it. Wait, that's all the crops you have? So this farm is not enough to feed anyone, to be honest. So the stables are here as well. Actually, no, the stables... Are these the stables? I think this is the stables. But given that it's a port city, it is quite possible that they import their food from other places instead of growing their own. Like there's no farmland around here, you can see that. So let us go down to the docks first of all and have a look around down here. So according to the book, the docks are the biggest in Skyrim, and there's like one boat and two smaller boats. Not that impressive, but given the scale of the game, right, you can't really fit any more into this. It's already taking up half the river. Like in the real world, docks are huge, massive things. I almost want to see at least 4 times as big, the docks, but you can't actually fit it here, can you? So never mind. So the scale of the game makes this slightly awkward and slightly difficult. So like this ship it's the right size for a person. So you see how big I am, and then or like you see how big these other people are. So that ship is the right scale if we scale to the person. But then if we scale to the person, then the docks is too small.
Up to the Blue Palace. It is a sight to see.
This ship is the right size if we scale to the docks. So if all the ships were this big at the docks, then you can fit maybe 4 or 5 of these ships in this, but then they're the wrong scale again because it's like this is too small. It's not really an ocean-going vessel, it's only a really small boat. So scale problems, but that's a thing in every video game really. Is it impressive enough? I guess it's... no. I wish there were more boats. I'm sorry. I'm trying real hard to be impressed by the size of these docks, but I'm not. I wish this was bigger. I'm trying to think of the other games. I mean, Morrowind is also way too small. Like everything in Morrowind is also way too small. I'm trying to think about Oblivion. What's the name of the city? Was it Anvil? One of the cities in Oblivion also had a dock. Was that bigger? I don't know. I mean, if there were like 3 or 4 of ships that size, I would be more impressed. Alright. I don't remember if this is hostile and if people might start attacking me when I go in here. So this is kind of cool. There's a giant cave inside here. I don't know if they excavated it or if they just reinforced an existing cave, but it's actually open to the water. And this is the east.
The warehouse is for East Empire.
Oh, I'm trespassing. So this is the East Empire Company warehouse, and supposedly entire ships can sail into here to load and unload their goods. So this is impressive. Also vulnerable to earthquakes and makes the stuff above us really fragile. Wait a minute. Was there this much space on the outside? I don't think there was. Like, look how high this roof is. Anyway, so this is the warehouse, and I'm not gonna go too far into it. I think I'm actually not supposed to be here. So there you go. This is a gameplay area where you have to sneak in and steal something, if I remember right. And it serves as kind of like a dry dock, but it's not really dry. So that ship is pushed up on those sticks and they're repairing it. So this is cool. Alright, let's go back outside. There's a goat in here. Why is there a goat in here? Why is there... Oh, there's a goat running free inside the warehouse. So that's pretty cool. I mean, it's a pretty big operation if you have a giant cave and you can actually sail your entire ship into a warehouse, right?
There's nothing for you in the warehouse, so why don't you take a walk?
Okay, so let's go back up and go into the city proper. Unfortunately, the warehouse is completely disconnected from the city. You would think that something like this, there might be like a lift to lift the cargo into the city or something, but there isn't. So we follow this road back up, and again we don't really see a very good view of the city. I guess this is like the best view? It's not really the best view, is it? See, I keep thinking, I think I've seen concept art. I think, like when the game first came out, I think there was like a screenshot of it taken from the sky up there. Like if you're flying up there and looking that way, it actually looks really good, the city. I seem to remember a screenshot taken from the air, which, I mean, it. I can understand, like trying to find the best shot
Disrespect.
to sell the
Disrespect
game,
me.
but it's something that the player would never see because we can't fly in this game. Like I can jump this high, like no, you can't fly in the game, and so it's something that the player would never see unless it's on these rocks somehow. Hold on. So this is the path up to the city, and again there's a big long path, but this time it goes straight up. Remember how back in Whiterun, the path into the city kind of went around in a giant loop, and then across the mountain through a gate into another gate. So here you just go straight up, and it's not interesting. Although the gate is not that interesting either. Also, you'll notice the stoneworks. It's not broken or anything. So, as we said earlier, Solitude is rich. Solitude is, just judging by the architecture, Solitude is significantly wealthier than Whiterun. You'll notice the city walls are not broken in any way, they're not renovated in any way, everything is complete. So it's well maintained. There's a lot of stone. In fact, I think most of the city's buildings are also stone. And so the city is just rich, right? Just full of money. I'm still trying to find that screenshot. Still trying to find that concept art. And this is not it. This is not it. Look at this. At the risk of falling down and killing myself, let me come over here. Nope. In fact, you can't even see the windmill. The geometry of the windmill, somehow they cut it out from here. So if you imagine you're flying in the air out there and looking towards the city, that would be really impressive. I don't know, I can't find it. I can't find the best view of this. Alright, let's go back to our tour of the city. Please don't be stuck. Invisible rocks! Alright, so the city walls are well maintained. Why is this here? Okay, that doesn't go anywhere. The city walls are very well maintained. Look at that. Look how well maintained it is, and also look how intricate it is too. Like all the shapes. Like if you remember the walls on Whiterun, they were pretty thin and they were pretty basic. Whereas here, like look at all these little ledges. Look at the castellation. Look at all these shapes. Look at all the windows and everything. Like these walls are much. Not only are they better maintained, they're also more complex. And they're also better defenses too. So everything about this is just better, and by better I really do mean more expensive. Like it looks more expensive than Whiterun. How much more expensive actually? Let me just think about this. So the crappy walls in Whiterun, so how much more work? 4, 8, 10 times? 10 times more stone in these walls than in the walls of Whiterun? Because it's not only taller, but it's also thicker. You see that, right? The walls.
Construction.
And then as we go into the city, please don't crash. Alright. So as we go into the city, we walk straight into the market district. Look at the walls. These walls are, I mean, there's a bit of stuff growing on it. There's like moss and stuff, but aside from that, it's complete. It is fully maintained and complete. So we have stone buildings with a bit of timber at the top. Stone building with a bit of timber at the top. So all of these buildings are very fancy, but also old. Look at all the moss growing on it. I think you can harvest the moss. So it's big, expensive, and also a little bit old. So we have the the Winking Schema, this is the inn. And then we have a clothing store, what's it called? The Radiant Raiment. We have an apothecary selling potions and herbs. And then we have a general store here. And then there's a little bit of a market. The well, even the well is fancier. Look at this. Even the well has like a giant thing on top of it to stop birds from pooping inside. Remember how the well in Whiterun was just open to the sky? So this one has a thing to stop birds from pooping straight in. And then there's a small market with 3 stores. And there's the windmill. And there's a giant arch. Look how much stone there is. Just look at the sheer mass of this. Look how much stone there is. There's a lot of stone in this city, and this is a very expensive city. So above the market district, you go up the ramp. Up the ramp, and then there's weapons and armor here. Here's a blacksmith. I think the Fletcher is here, selling bows and arrows and also weapons. And then through this... Oh, is that the Emperor's Tower there? Oh no, that's the Emperor's Tower. Oh, I see. So they were talking about the rounded architecture there versus the square stuff. So there are different styles, suggesting that parts of this were built at different times. So like the rounded shapes of the bridge and the rounded shape of that tower is supposedly in contrast to the very square stuff here. Not that it's that noticeable, but you can tell like all that is square and square and square, and that's kind of round. Alright, so this is Castle Dower. That is Castle Dower in there. And this is the Castle Dower Courtyard. Temple of the Divines is back here, although it looks more like a... Oh crap, I can't even go in there. It looks more like a fortress than a temple, to be honest. What is this again? Emperor's Tower. Okay, that's the Emperor's Tower there. And it's square. And that's round. And this is also round, and then the Temple of the Divines is back here, even though it doesn't really look like a temple, does it? Does it? I don't know, it doesn't look like a Nord building. So the Nord buildings are all timber and stuff, right? Remember
Yes.
the timber palace and the timber shrine of Kinnereth back in Whiterun. So
Lightly armored means light on your
through
feet.
here is the residential district, I suppose, and all the buildings again are in stone. So the shop district was through there on the other side of the arch. The shop district, Castle Dower, and then the residential district is here. Actually, let me just look at these doors. What does this say? Vittoria Vici's house. So Vittoria Vici is wealthy. And this is a stone house. What is this? Hall of the Dead. You can't really tell, can you? I mean, it all looks the same to me. I guess the temples have slightly different window shapes. So this is the Hall of the Dead, or the Temple of Arcade. And this is the player's house. You can buy a house in this city. Proudspire Manor, stone building again. And then other people's houses, Advir's house, Yvette Sand's house, and then that there is the Bard's College with a lot of fancy windows, high Gothic, or what would be high Gothic in the real world, compared to the Nordic timber of Whiterun. Everything here is more continental Europe in inspiration. I mean, if you know your architecture history, like continental Europe means France, Germany, and the windows there, they're definitely high Gothic. What else is there to say? We'll go inside the buildings later on. For now, let me just walk around here.
Said you got here just
And
before
again,
the
like these kind of arches and vaults,
first sight.
cross vaults, all very Gothic, all very European. And the stonework, and you're gonna see outside, not that much to see. I should probably wait till daytime, shouldn't I? It's kind of dark in here, sorry about that. Alright, here we go. Alright, daytime. That's better. That looks better. So we got archers, and fancy railing things? Grills? Interesting. A ridiculous amount of stone everywhere. And the thing, like I say, ridiculous amount of stone. The thing is, they have to carry all this stone up here, and sewers. I don't know how sewers work on top of the arch. So even sewers, you think, well, sewers are sewers, what's so special? But there were no sewers in Whiterun. I mean, building sewers is expensive. You have to dig holes in the ground, and then you have to put pipes down there, and to carry away sewage and wastewater and stuff. So sewer systems cost money, and the fact that there's a sewer system here and no sewer system in Whiterun kind of tells you that the city is wealthier than Whiterun. In Whiterun, there were open waterways, and I guess those are like open sewers, where the water is constantly washing through, and those kind of open sewers go through the town. And those things exist too in the real world, but like these closed sewers are more expensive than open sewers, but they're also more sanitary, right? Oh, look at this, a wooden building. Half of this building is actually wood. That's unusual. Who lives here? Yala's house. Okay, that's interesting. So most of the buildings in the city are stone, but there's a bit of wood, and then more stone. This is Erica's house. So these are noble people. Erica is a noble person, and whoever lives here, what's her name again? Bryling is also a noble person. And then the blue palace is slightly blue, but actually mostly grey. So the blue palace is through here. Again, a lot of plants. In fact, the whole thing is overgrown, isn't it? Oh, that's the Pelagius wing, and there's more moss growing on the Pelagius wing than on the other wing, because this has actually been locked down and nobody goes there anymore. So the blue palace is this. There's a dome. That dome looks a little bit out of place. I don't know if you know your architecture history as well as I do, but there's this weird mix of Gothic, Roman, and Renaissance. So the tall, narrow windows are Gothic, and in fact that is a very, very typical kind of Gothic window arrangement. But then the rounded arches, the semicircle arches, they are Roman. And then the dome, the semicircular dome, or semi-spherical dome is Renaissance. So there's a mix of different inspirations from the real world, although this is not the real world, right? This is Skyrim, this is the Elder Scrolls. And so the history in this world is not the same as the history in our world, so we can't apply the same historical analysis to it. Except that we can say that the inspirations for this architecture are a little bit mixed. And if we look at this, in fact, let's go inside. Alright, so just like in Whiterun, we'll go inside the palace, and then we'll go back, and then we'll go through all the interiors of the buildings. This palace, although it's stone, therefore stone is more expensive, but it's less impressive than the castle in Whiterun, right?
For a dragon, Pines Grove.
I mean, first of all, the entrance is kind of low, and the door is small. Compare the size of this door with the size of the door back in Whiterun, back in Dragon Reach. The Dragon Reach was so much more impressive than this tiny little door. And then we go inside, and we look at the ceiling heights. I don't know if it's funny to me because it's like, really, ceiling heights? So look at the ceiling height here. I mean, everything is stone, I know, and therefore it's more expensive. And there's the dome there. But this is significantly less impressive, I feel like. It's less open, less impressive than Whiterun, or at least... No, this is slightly less impressive. I think the dome's even in the wrong place. Maybe the dome should be back here. So this is the Yao.
May the gods watch over your battles, friend.
I'm pretty sure there needs to be more columns here. I think we need extra columns here. Domes are heavy, and I don't think there's enough structure holding up this dome actually, now that I look at it closely. this dome was a little bit problematic in terms of the structure holding up anyway. I mean, remember Whiterun? Remember Dragon Reach? You go in, there was a huge staircase, and then there were like feasting hall, and then at the far end there was a fire in the middle and like a hearth, and then at the far end there was the Jarl who was slouching on a chair. Whereas here, I mean, it's just not, there's no feasting hall. Like, it's just small. It's just smaller, and then you go up these tiny stairs, and then there's a tiny chair that's not even lined up to the middle, like it's off to the side a little bit. It's just less impressive, which is really weird because Solitude is supposedly much wealthier than Whiterun. Like, the rest of the city is wealthier, but the palace is not. And that's why I said, when we were back in Whiterun, I said Dragon Reach seems out of place. Like, the sheer size and scale and design of Dragon Reach seem to be out of place. And it doesn't seem to fit the story, and it doesn't seem to fit the context of the game world, because Whiterun really shouldn't be that wealthy. And so the Jarl of Whiterun should really not be able to afford as impressive a palace as Dragon Reach. Especially when we come here and we see this palace, and this palace is pretty modest in comparison. Like, look at this. Just the ceiling heights and things. And I mean, it is stone. I understand it is stone, and therefore, you know, it's stone. I mean, just that counts for something, I guess.
Please address all questions to the steward, Folk Firebeard.
I mean, if you look at the details, yeah, there's a lot of details. I mean, look at how intricate these geometries are. And look at like the arches and like the different shapes, and then the ceilings have the coffering, and everything's really interesting. Look at all these details with all these little bits and pieces. But just the scale of it is less impressive. Like, I guess that's what I'm really trying to say. Even the doors are, look at that. It's iron framed wooden doors. Let's just look, okay, let's just examine the detailing and the fanciness of the wealthiest building in the city, which is the palace. So I think the Jarl's bedroom is this one. Yeah, okay, the Jarl's bedroom is this one with a fancy bed, carved, and she has furniture, a rug, fancy chairs. Everything looks good. And although everything is a little bit old, look at the walls, right? Everything is a little bit worn. And if we go back outside, you will see like all the somebody needs to do some gardening, is what I want to say, because there's moss and weeds and stuff growing everywhere. So this is not just that they're wealthy, but they're also a little bit old, and maybe a little bit complacent is what they're trying to imply, because it's not as well maintained as you might expect. Like all the weeds and things, especially, I think, is supposed to indicate that the people of Solitude are getting complacent, and that does actually fit the... Oh, wait a minute, is this? The Jarl's bed is not, though. This is the court mage. Is the mage's quarters bigger than the Jarl's quarters? I think it is. Well, it's about the same size. Okay. Yeah, so I think the story is that the Empire and the allies of the Empire have grown complacent. And there is a rebellion going on, and that's part of the story, right? So the Pelagius wing is back here behind this. We can't actually, there's the doors downstairs. Yeah, so you notice that it's expensive, it's wealthy, but it's not as well maintained as you might hope. Like, look, there's like moss hanging inside the building. That's crazy. That's the Pelagius wing. We're not gonna go in there. And then the servants are down here. Let's see how nice the servant quarters are. Here's the kitchen. The architecture is more or less the same. The furnishings are a lot more functional. There's like brooms and things. Alright, so the architecture is mostly the same. The beds are less fancy. And the furniture is rough and less decorated. Alright, so this is the servants' quarters. What else do we have to see? Is that it? That's pretty much it. Oh, what's back here? Back here is someone else's room. I don't know whose room this is. Nobody owns the bed, so nobody actually sleeps here. Interesting. Alright, so this is the Blue Palace. And yeah, I just find it weird that this is
hello. Tidying up.
this is less impressive than Dragon Reach back in Whiterun. I'm just trying to think, like, is there any sign that there's been renovations here? I think the only sign that there might have been some renovations is the throne, which is not really a throne. The fact that the throne is off-axis, which is a little bit weird. Like, everything else is very much symmetrical, which is what you'd expect in a big palace. Like, this space is symmetrical, except when you come up the staircase, this is not symmetrical, which is really a little bit strange. But aside from this little bit, everything else seems to be original in the sense that it follows a clear plan, although this doesn't extend out, whereas this extends back here and downstairs. I'm not sure, maybe... See, the thing about buildings is they're not always built all at the same time. Like, sometimes like you build one wing, and then like maybe a few decades later you build another wing, and in the time in between, like, things change, and so it's slightly different. So when something is off-center and mostly symmetrical but not entirely symmetrical, it would suggest that maybe one side was built at a different time from the other, which is possible. Although this main hall is very much symmetrical, so this is probably the same, like it was all built at the same time. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure how to read this. Like, this ends here, but this sticks out a lot further. Maybe that back there is an extension, I don't know. Not sure how to read this. Alright, let's go back outside. So that's the palace. There's moss growing everywhere, but aside from that, oh, and there's like cracks in the walls. But aside from that, fairly impressive. And like, look at this.
Business to college
Look at all these
mages
weeds.
like Sarthal anyway.
Look at all these
It's a
weeds
place for
growing
the
everywhere.
dead.
Yeah, so they're complacent, especially the people in the palace. Maybe not so much the people in Castle Dower, who are the Imperials, but the people in the palace are definitely meant to be seen as complacent. Let's go into Bryling's house. So she is one of the Thanes, so she's a noble person. Let's see how fancy this house is. Looks almost just like the palace. Same textures on the walls. Structurally a little different, but a similar level of detailing, like a similar level of complexity in the details, right? Compared to the palace. In a way, we might say that Solitude is more egalitarian than Whiterun. Like, if you take the richest house compared to the poorest house, there's a huge difference.
Unless we have specific business interested.
And even if you take the difference between the Jarl's palace, take Dragon Reach, and compare it to the noblemen's houses in Whiterun, there's a huge difference in the quality of the furnishings and the interiors and details and everything like that. Spider webs. Whereas here, you know, the nobleman's house is kind of the same as the palace, kind of. So the Yao is not actually very much richer than just based on furnishings, right? It's not based on actual bank accounts. So let us go into the Bard's College. The Bard's College, in a way, is more
Lots of
impressive.
things to take care of. What do you need?
More impressive than the Blue Palace. Like, the Blue Palace seems really bulky and heavy, Whereas there's more windows in the Bard's College. Let's see if we can see those windows from the inside and what they look like. Okay, well there's the windows from the inside. Are they shorter from the inside than from the outside? Not sure. And I don't know where that light's coming from. There's a light right here, but there's no light source. Alright, so the Bard's College is again the same columns, the same kind of furnishings. It's like the same architect designed all the buildings here, which might be the case. It's a little bit odd that all the buildings have the same columns, though. They just bought all the columns in bulk from the same guy. I'll buy 1,000 of those and we'll use them in the whole city. So the furnishings are quite fancy. The Bard's College is also relatively wealthy. I guess just as wealthy as the Yao somehow. I guess it's not too surprising. I mean, the Yao's palace is just the Yao, whereas the Bard's College, there's a lot of bards living here, right? So even though, you know, the quality of the building is the same, it's being funded by a lot more people, if that makes sense. Because there's like, I think there's like 12 bards here, whereas there's only one Yao. Okay, I've been here. Let's go upstairs.
I wish only to graduate roll with the Legion. My drums will lead our troops to victory.
Storage cupboard, kind of.
Remember,
Classroom.
your job to deliver these songs.
So it is a college, so there is a
Draw them
classroom.
in. They will love you for it.
And then I don't know. I feel like this was not designed as a college. There's another classroom there. I don't know if this was designed as a college or if it's like a house that's been renovated into a college. Because the halls and the rooms and the classrooms and things, they don't, like, it doesn't look specifically like a classroom. It looks more like just a room that's been, like the furniture has been arranged to be a classroom, although there's a little podium here maybe. I'm just trying to say, it doesn't feel like a school. It doesn't feel like what we know to be a school. I mean, there are a lot of books and things. Why does he have a torch? Like, if you just kind of glance at this, you don't think school, is what I'm trying to say. It just feels like a manor, like a wealthy house that's been turned into a school, which is also okay. Like, if you just think of this layout, and you think of the furnishings... Oh, we're underground, by the way. I think we're underground. And slightly less fancy beds for the students. So the teachers get slightly more fancy beds than the students, but it's not that much of a difference. Oh, we're not underground, we're just on the ground floor. Like, the walls are so massive that I can't tell whether we're underground or whether we're just on the ground floor. Usually you need the ground, like, if you have a cellar, you need the cellar to be really massive. Alright, so there is all of that. And Ayala's house. I don't want to trespass too much, but I might. Okay, let's go in here. So these are the... I mean, I don't think there are any poor people in the city, but the poorest would be this sort of thing. So the rugs are less fancy, and it's timber instead of stone. The chairs are more humble, although, you know, it's still pretty good, am I right? Like the floorboards, look, the floorboards are complete. If we compare this to the floorboards back in Whiterun, the floorboard back in Whiterun were like cracked and broken in a lot of places, whereas this is complete. So even the poorest people have floors that are complete, and the walls aren't cracked and broken either. So just kind of
something?
looking at the details and the textures, you can kind of see that Solitude as a whole is just richer. So like these floorboards and these furnishings, so the upper class people of Whiterun are the equivalent of the lower class people of Solitude, if that makes sense. So everything in Solitude is just a tier wealthier than in Whiterun. And I just keep thinking like, and this really makes Dragonreach weird because that palace seems too fancy to me. It really does. Who lives here? Victoria Vici. Oh, she's dead. So let me just trespass in here. Oh, I stole her key too. This is. I hope nobody arrests me in here. So this is Victoria Vici's house. Victoria Vici is very wealthy and well connected to the empire. And so we have a big tall ceiling here. The furnishings, the rug. So the rug, I mean, it's slightly less frayed. Oh yeah, okay. I mean, I can already see the patterns. Oh, this rug is cheaper. You can see the patterns. You can see that there's like a set of rich furniture, and then there's like a set of poor furniture, and they make sure to use them consistently to indicate to you. I mean, if you pay attention, that is. If you're paying attention, then they use like the textures and the furnishings to communicate to you how wealthy a person is. Which is great, like which is environmental storytelling. That's what it means. Like you can understand who the people are just by walking into the house and looking at their tables, which is good. You know, and it's not all the same. It's not all the same. It's very clear that different people have different furnishings and different levels of wealth. Very good. So fancy beds, not quite as fancy as the Yao's, but you know, there's the Yao's bed, and then there's the fancy beds, and then there's the cheaper beds, and then there's the crappy beds, which we don't have in Solitude. Let's not steal from her. Yeah, good. I mean, everything is consistent. Everything makes sense. Everything tells the story. I like it. And just everything is more detailed. I mean, well, not more detailed, but all the details are fancier in the Solitude than in Whiterun. I need to be careful what I say because it's not like they spent less time on Whiterun than in Solitude. No, it's like they deliberately did that. They deliberately made Whiterun appear less wealthy. So when I shouldn't say that Solitude is more detailed. I should say that Solitude is detailed in such a way as to make it appear fancier. I mean, it takes a lot of work to make something look ugly too. It seems like a weird thing to say, but you know, to make something look convincingly poor also takes a lot of work. In games, that is. In the real world, like you just kind of leave something out in the open and then let it be rained on for a while, and you bring it back in and you say, oh look, the bed's half rotten, there you go, it's poor. So in the real world, the weather would do for you what you need to do for yourself in the game, because there's nothing rots in the game. Like you have to design something to look rotten. Like if you want to make a rotten bed in the game, you actually have to work at it. So the Hall of the Dead, interestingly, is is it? It's humble, but the door, like, it's still the same iron frame doors, the same fancy furniture, the same fancy-ish bed. So it's not poor, but it's humble in a way that, you know, like the columns and things, there's less carvings and less details in the building itself. But the Priest of Arcade is not necessarily poor in the sense that the furnishings are complete. I think it's just humble instead of actually poor, right? Like the chairs are just fine, and the table is just fine. Although some of the other, like this chair, like there's a rich chair and there's a poor chair, which I think is supposed to suggest that the priest doesn't really care one way or the other about money and things. Alright, so let's go into Castle Dower and observe the military. Actually, let's go to the temple first. And then we'll observe the military installation. So this is the temple. From the outside it looks like... I guess it's a little bit like an old school medieval
As High Priest of the Eighth Divine.
church. Let's look inside though. Oh hey, look at this.
Blessings of the Eight Divines upon you. How may I help?
Can you tell me about the architecture? So this is very vertical. Very vertical and very Gothic cathedral-like. Okay. So the interior is Gothic cathedral. It's just the exterior is not as interesting.
Remind us of our place when we forget.
Alright, here we go. Yeah, right. Tall Gothic spaces. And this the 8 divines plus an empty space there for Talos. I don't really have anything to say. I mean, maybe I should say more. Or maybe you should do your own research and just go to Google image search and type in Gothic Cathedral. And there you go, there's your explanation. Maybe that's too lazy of me to say that. So, tall spaces are difficult, especially when you're building with stone, because stone tends to want to fall down because it's heavy, and they don't stick together except with mortar. And so, like, tall spaces are technically challenging. I mean, you can figure this out yourself. Like, you take some building blocks and you try and build as tall as possible, and you'll understand that the taller you build, the more difficult it is, because you have to balance everything carefully, otherwise it'll fall down. Like you take one block, put it on the ground, that's easy. You put another block on top, that's kind of easy. By the time you get to like 10 or 20 blocks up, it falls down very easily because it's the weight of it is just, and the weight of it and it's not very well balanced. So tall, thin things have always been technically challenging, and they always will be technically challenging. And so when you have a tall, thin space like this, it is very impressive. And it's also kind of unique. And it's the same reason why people build Gothic cathedrals. Like, why build a Gothic cathedral to be really tall and thin? Is because it's technically challenging and therefore impressive and therefore unique. And so when you walk into one of the Gothic cathedrals in Europe, there's nothing else quite like it, because no one else can afford to build tall, narrow buildings like that. It's only the church that has enough money. It's not really money, basically people are willing to build for the church because they believe in God and they want to build fancy stuff for worship. And so there's nothing else quite like it except other Gothic cathedrals, which, you know what I'm trying to say. And it's just so when you kind of put your best architects and best builders to work, you end up with stuff like this, which is technically challenging. And that explains the tall, narrow space. And of course it's also impressive just by its sheer height. Actually, can we go up there? There's a staircase back here, right? No, there isn't. Wait a minute. Oh, is this actually in the cross? It's actually a cross shape, isn't it? So the shape of the cathedral is also where in the cross is, so you can see how there's like one long rectangle down here, and then there's a side rectangle across here, so the shape of it is even in the cross. That doesn't really make sense in the game, because in the game the cross doesn't mean anything. In the real world, the cross is obviously a symbol of Christianity. Having beds up here also is not entirely clear why this is the case. So this is somewhat inspired by real-world Gothic cathedrals, but also not entirely, because this kind of space is not accurate. Where does this go? Oh, this goes to the city walls. Okay. Is there anything else we need to say about this? Not really. Not as big as a real cathedral though. Not even close. So in a real cathedral, like the biggest Gothic cathedrals in the real world is easily twice as tall or more, and easily twice as wide or more. Maybe they should have made this twice as big. Would that be too difficult for the game? I'm not sure. It would be more impressive if it were. You know, there's a certain... you need to be a certain size before things start being impressive. I mean, the shape of it is right. But I feel like the scale of it is not sufficient to be truly awe-inspiring, you know what I mean? Anyway, it's mostly there. All the pieces are there. Again, all the pieces are there, but it's just a little bit too small. I wonder about that. In fact, this seems taller on the outside than the inside. Wait a minute. Look at this. Isn't it taller on the outside than the inside? 1, 2, 3, 4. No. Well.
How may I help?
1, 2, 3. Well, maybe. No. 1, 2, 3. No, I guess it's not. I guess it's not taller on the. Actually, no, it is because this is the front of it, and also this door is to the side, right?
You look troubled.
This
Have
door
you
is
come
on
seeking
one
guidance?
side. Whereas this door is in the middle of the building. Wait a minute, it doesn't even line up. What? Okay, well. Alright, okay, it doesn't line up. I don't know what else there is to say. I think it could have been more impressive.
Yes?
I think it could have been. I think they should have made it bigger. That's my opinion. And you can't stop me from saying my opinion. So there's the Temple of the Divines. That's the Emperor's Tower. So this is a castle. Oh, okay. So the castle tower. Oh, this is a different throne. Can I sit on the throne? Do I slouch? Damn it! Don't slouch. Okay, there's the throne. So I think this is like the old palace. The castle tower I think is like an older palace, and then the blue palace is a newer palace. Or at least, so there's two competing powers, if you can see. Like there's the Emperor, and then there's the High King of Skyrim, and the High King of Skyrim is subservient to the Emperor. And this is like the Emperor's throne, and the other one is the High King's throne. Which is, I mean, it's really complicated if you think about it. There's competing powers. I think the Emperor sleeps here when he visits Skyrim. It's there's less furnishings. Oh crap, I can't open that anymore. Less decoration, but in a way more impressive. Like the central space is taller. It's more austere. There's more grayness, less color. But I guess what's the word? More brutal, I guess is the word. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, the Empire does enforce its power through military might. Okay, let's go back outside. So this is like the Emperor's home away from home. I mean, there's not so much wealth or decoration as much as just sheer power. So let's go in here. This is Castle Tower, the actual castle. And I believe this is meant to be more a functional building, just full of soldiers. Again, tall space and bare stone. So a very efficient military structure.
I'm telling you, Ulfric's planning an attack on Whiterun.
Castle Tower dungeon. We're
He'd be
gonna
insane
avoid
to
the
try.
dungeon.
He doesn't have the men.
I'm trying to
That's
find the
not what my
barracks,
scouts
if
report,
you're wondering.
sir. Every day more join his cause. Riften, Dawnstar,
The barracks are here. Okay, this is
It's not a cause. It's a rebuilding.
Call it
Armory?
whatever you like, General.
Armory.
The man's
Ooh, look,
going to
Imperial
try to
armor.
take
Look at that. We
Whiterun.
can dress up as Imperials.
Now, Baldriff.
This is the
Baldruf refuses
barracks.
the Legion's right to garrison troops in the
The beds are
On the
cheap
other hand,
but
he also
functional,
refuses to acknowledge
and everything
Ulfric's
is arranged in neat rows.
Well, if he wants to stand outside the protection of the Empire, fine. Let
And
Ulfric
those
build
two
his
people are
city.
talking about politics.
General,
You people and your damn Jarls.
Should we listen to this?
sir, you can't force a Nord to accept help he hasn't asked for.
If Ulfric's making a move for Whiterun, then we need to be there to stop it. Draft another letter with the usual platitude. This time, share some of your intelligence regarding Ulfric's plans. Embellish if you have to. We'll let it seem like it's his idea.
Yes, sir.
You Nords and your bloody sense of honor.
Sir.
So that's an Imperial, he's a general. She's a Nord, and she's like the second in command. We're not gonna worry about the politics. You can play the game yourself if you want the politics. So this is the general's quarters, which has some interesting shelves, but a relatively simple bed because he's a military man and he's not into fancy decorations and luxury.
Damn Stormcloak rebels.
Something to report?
And then up here, what do we have? We have the city walls. Maybe this is the general's bed, I don't know. So you see like this less tapestries, less flowers. Oh, there's a little bit of lavender there. Alright, well this is the military base. And this is really, it feels like a castle, right? More that... It's more functional? More functional, less homely. But still, you know, a lot of stone. and like less decorations, less carvings on the walls as well.
Dragons?
Need some?
Alright, so down here we have the shops. We don't need to go to all the shops. Let's go to a few of the shops. Maybe we just go.
Codlec White Mane is a better
Let's just
place
go into
to
the
go.
inn,
Or is there
and that'll
any
be
place
it.
better than Sovngarde?
So here's the inn. Let's just check the floorboards and see if the floorboards are broken, shall we? Remember that the inn in Whiterun, the floorboards were broken. Oh, there's no floorboards. It's just stone. There's not even timber. Oh, there's the timber. Nope, the floorboards are fine. So yeah, and it's also bigger. Look at this. The inn is also bigger, but there's no hearth. There's a chimney. Oh, there's chimneys.
Fletching suits me. It's difficult and
There's
sometimes
chimneys.
tedious, but
They're
a well-made arrow
technologically
strikes
more
forth like the
advanced
fury of
than
a god.
Whiterun. Interesting. I mean, chimneys are, as I said, they're healthier than the open fires because you channel the smoke away from your house, and so you don't have to breathe in the toxic smoke, which is good. So the inn itself is bigger, and the rooms are much bigger. Is this a room that I can rent? Let's see.
That Toad 190 is always a crowd pleaser. Father
Everything's bigger, the rooms are fancier. Alright, there you go. So everything is
I wish only to
wealthier.
and roll with the Legion.
I hope you can
My
remember
drums will lead our
the
troops
inn,
to victory.
the banded mare back in Whiterun. Just compare the size of it, the furnishings, and the quality of the rooms, and you can see what we mean when we say that Solitude is just wealthier than Whiterun.
Speaking of harsh, you bards don't cut each other any slack, do you? Not in our nature.
Alright. So there you go, and that's our little tour of Solitude. What else is there to say? So, you know, at the end of our walk through Whiterun, I was saying we'll use Whiterun as the default, and then we'll compare all the other cities to Whiterun to understand them. And basically, to summarize, I guess we just say that Solitude is just richer. Everything is stone, a lot less timber, a lot more stone, and all the furnishings are fancier, and all the floorboards are less broken, and all the walls are less cracked. although there's weeds, like there's weeds everywhere if you look carefully, and there's kind of moss on the city wall. So they're wealthier, but they've also grown complacent about their wealth. And it does fit into the story in the sense that the Imperials were taken off guard by the rebellion. So Ulfric Stormcloak is in rebellion against the Empire, and there's a civil war going on. And the Empire was taken off guard. So the Empire is fat and wealthy, but also complacent. And you can see it in the architecture of Solitude. Amazing. Environmental storytelling. Like, through looking at the architecture, you can see it. You can see the wealth, and you can see the complacency. I find it a little bit strange that there are no poor people in Solitude at all. Or if there are, I don't know where they're sleeping. You know what I mean? But if we want to see poor people, we'll see it in the next city, where we're going to Windhelm next. And I guess I'll see you guys there.